I gotta get my charger.
Welcome to Where's My Charger with Matt and Drew. Where was your charger this time, bud?
Shut up, dude. Don't talk to me when we're not recording. All right. And we are here again, and we are back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And this is the Back Again podcast. This is our sequel podcast where we look at sequels from the past and see if they need to exist or not. We are continuing on our Disney animated sequel list. And today we are doing the follow-up to the 1967 The Jungle Book. And we are doing The Jungle Book 2, which was released in 2003. This is another one of those movies where we had a movie come out way back when, and now we're making a sequel. And the question is, why?
Why indeed?
It's a great example of what we're talking about with these sequels, where The Jungle Book is a great musical. It wraps up the story nice and tight. It's an hour 30, and it's done after that. But then all these years later, 30-something years later, the studio's like, or the producers are like, nope, we got something else to tell.
And then just real quick, because we did bring up the original, I just want to say as far as, because you have history with the original.
Yeah, I probably saw the original. That was probably one of the first Disney movies I saw at a really young age as a kid. And I think I only really connected with it because it is such a musical kind of movie with the jazz that they do and with the fact that they cast like really talented singers as the animals in the movie. It's just a very fun kind of like, even though the story is really basic, it's very entertaining and it kind of keeps it alive for you.
And yeah, I had never seen, this was one of the few Disney movies, or at least big Disney movies, that I had never seen. So this was my first time watching it.
So what did you think of the first Jungle Book, just real quick?
I agree with everything you said, where it was very simple, but it was also just a great kind of showcase of essentially telling a narrative almost only through song, or at least primarily through song.
So without saying any more, let's go ahead and jump into this plot of The Jungle Book 2. So we reveal in the opening that not much time has passed. We kind of start this movie off with Mowgli doing narration through shadow puppets explaining the events of the first movie. And he's explaining this to the family of the girl that he follows at the end of the first movie. And we reveal that she's got parents, she's got a little brother, and he's telling the story about how he fought the tiger Shakira and how he made his way to this village. And we're really just going kind of day by day in the day of the life of these villagers kind of living on the other side of the jungle. So while we're there, Mowgli is very kind of weird about his current situation with living with these villagers, but kind of being raised by animals. He's got
that wild side.
Yeah, he's got that wild side. He's telling his stories about the jungle. A lot of people, they believe him, but they also think that his stories are a little too wild. He's trying to convince a lot of the children to come to the jungle with them. He sings a song, which is a pretty good song, but it's all about like how the jungle's got some kind of rhythm and how, everyone can really have fun in the jungle. So the father of Ashanti is really upset about this, and he's actually played by
John Rhys Davies.
John Rhys Davies.
Favorite for Disney.
Who's known for a lot of famous roles, but also he was the King of Thieves on our first episode. He's the father of Aladdin. So he's back again playing a father, and he's upset with Mowgli because his songs are actually leading the children to the jungle.
Like the Pied Piper.
Yeah, he's like leading them across like the river into the jungle, and like Ashanti's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then because of that, John Rhys Davies shows up and he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, what are you guys doing? And he basically explains to Mowgli that, the jungle's a dangerous place. And I know this because I got these tiger scars. And he kind of shows him some like scars.
Yeah.
So after all this happens, cut to John Goodman as Baloo. And I think you had the really good saying, because this is only a couple years after Blues Brothers 2000.
So might as well call them Blues Brothers.
So John Goodman is our new Baloo. He's singing, he's hanging out. He misses Mowgli, and he's kind of talking about how he regrets taking him to that village. While he's kind of reminiscing about this.
Not talking to anyone in particular, just talking to himself.
Yeah, just talking to himself. And but while he's kind of doing this, the tiger Shakira kind of overhears him talking. So he's going to try to kind of follow him, and he's like, Mowgli, huh? So now the tiger's kind of going after him and stuff. So Baloo is upset. So he's decided in this moment that he's going to head back to the village, and he's going to try to get Mowgli back. Along the way, the Black Panther has to stop Baloo, and he has to remind him that no, Mowgli is a human being. We literally just went over this a couple weeks ago. He cannot live here. Do not try to go back and get him. After he gives him this kind of big speech, Baloo is not having it. And he's gonna still go after Mowgli. So T'Challa decides to go get the elephants and kind of use them as a wall to stop Baloo, but then he uses some intricate bear tricks to kind of get around them and continue on towards Mowgli. So after this, we cut back to Shakira, who's still walking around. He's still upset about Mowgli, like he just heard Baloo talking about it earlier. But as he's walking through, we get to see the vultures again. And the only difference about these vultures is there's now a fifth vulture that's been added, and this is going to be played by Phil Collins. And I guess Phil Collins is just going to be like this bird that picks on Shakira. He's reminding him of his failures from the first Jungle Book. He's saying like, oh, you let a man cub defeat you. I'm not afraid of you.
And he wasn't even there. He's hearing this all second hand from the other vultures.
Yeah, he wasn't even in the first one, but yet he knows all the events of the first one.
Well, he's being filled in.
Yeah, he's being a real Phil Collins type, you know? So because of this, Shakira gets really mad and he decides to go to the village where the humans are sleeping. And it's nighttime and he's kind of sneaking around. He's looking for Mowgli.
Because as we see on all of these sequels, the villain's plan is to get revenge.
Yeah, it's like
and
deja vu.
That's it. They
All
don't
over
even,
again.
I don't even think they like bother like establishing like a real motive. I think they literally just have Phil Collins bully him.
Yeah.
Until he's driven to vengeance.
Mowgli is not asleep. He's kind of awake and he hears some noise kind of that's taken place in the village. So he goes out to investigate it. And we as the audience think this is going to be Shakira who's going to pop out. But in fact, it is Baloo. And Baloo is there to kind of like, you know...
It is John Goodman.
Yeah, and John Goodman is there to basically like, you know, reminisce with Mowgli. While they're kind of hanging out and catching up, Ashanti is trying to wake up Mowgli because she's trying to apologize that he got in trouble earlier for almost getting the kids in the jungle. While she's trying to look for Mowgli or get his attention from his window, Shakira hears this. So Shakira is kind of using her as bait to try to lure out Mowgli. But while this is happening, Ashanti kind of turns her head and she realizes that Baloo and Mowgli are kind of hanging out. She thinks that this is like a bear attack. Then she yells for all the villagers like, help, Mowgli's being attacked. And when the villagers come out, all they see is Shakira. So then we get a real people v tiger fight. Eventually this leads to Shakira kind of breaking loose and breaking free, and he gets out of the chaos.
Don't worry, no one gets hurt.
Yeah, no one gets hurt. But after this, everyone realizes that Mowgli is gone, and I believe it's John Rhys Davies and some other person that are like, oh no, Mowgli must have gone into the jungle. So Shakira hears this, he twists his mustache, and he goes, I'm gonna go after and get some tiger justice. So after this, and after everything kind of settles, Baloo and Mowgli are in the jungle and they're back at it. They're singing, they're hanging out. The snake from the first one is also there. He's trying to attack them, but he doesn't realize that they're in the middle of a musical number and that they can't be harmed. So they're just kind of singing, they're reminiscing, blah, blah, blah. And then we cut back to Ashanti and she's still in the jungle, she's searching. She also comes across the snake and he hypnotizes her. And he's about to like eat Ashanti, but right before he takes a bite, the baby from the village, who's now also in the jungle, shows up and rescues Ashanti. And now I guess the baby and Ashanti are going to go off and try to find Mowgli together. So after this, we cut back to Baloo and Mowgli, and they're still hanging out. They're doing nothing. Black Panther shows up. He's looking for Mowgli because he knows that the people are looking for him. He suspects that Baloo is hiding him. He's trying to get him back. Mowgli is actually kind of touched by the fact that everyone is looking after him. He thought that they were kind of upset with him and he was going to have to revert back to the jungle. But in fact, they're looking for him. He's kind of touched by that. Around the same time, he's starting to miss Ashanti. He wishes that he didn't run in the jungle, but overall, he's still kind of conflicted on what he wants to do. So after this, we cut back to Shakira, and he's still looking for Mowgli when the vultures and Phil Collins show up again. Phil Collins is still taunting him and mocking Shakira, but this time around, Shakira kind of plays it smart, and not only is he able to get information from Phil Collins on where Mowgli's heading, which is down the river, but then he also, grabs him by the neck, and he appears for the time being that he killed Phil Collins, which sends the vultures off. So now Shakira knows where Mowgli's heading, and he's gonna go try to get some more tiger justice. Cut to down the river where Mowgli's at, and we reveal that Mowgli and Baloo are actually looking for sanctuary, and they do this at King Louie's old place. But we find out that King Louis is no longer in power and that this is kind of a safe place for all of the wild animals to kind of come and hang out and dance and sing. And they kind of double down on this by singing a song about kind of being wild animals. After they sing this song, Ashanti and the baby are still searching. While they're searching, Mowgli's kind of separated from the happy song, and now he's sitting on a cliff and he's kind of singing a sad version of the Jungle Rhythm song. So it's kind of still wearing down on Mowgli that he doesn't know if he wants to go back to this jungle life because he's missing his new friends and he's missing Ashanti. While this is happening, he actually runs into Ashanti. Then after that, they run into Baloo. And before Baloo and Ashanti meet, you know, Mowgli was telling Baloo like, oh, if I see her again, like I don't care about her, like I care about you, Baloo. So if I see Ashanti again, like go ahead and like scare her. So during this encounter, Baloo tries to scare Ashanti. She's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then Mowgli tries to break it up. And then Baloo's like, I'm just doing what you told me to. And then because of this, Ashanti is now mad at Mowgli that he would set up some kind of plan to scare her. And then she storms off. Mowgli realizes what he does after this happens. And he tells Baloo like, no, like, you know, I like Ashanti or whatever. And then he goes after looking for Ashanti. So Mowgli goes after Ashanti. He finds her. But then Shakira shows up. And he is ready.
He's ready to get his tiger justice.
He's ready to get his tiger justice. So he decides to taunt the three of them a little bit. And he goes like, go ahead, start running and then I'll chase after you. The same thing that he does in the first one. So they start to run off. Mowgli decides to hide Ashanti and the baby and kind of, you know, take Shakira away from them. So this eventually leads to some kind of temple ruins that Mowgli is going to like jump to get to. And then once he's in the temple, he's going to hide from Shakira. So after Shakira and Mowgli are in the temple, basically everybody decides to go to the temple and try to help Mowgli. So we got Ashanti going to the temple. We got Baloo who meets the baby, and the baby and him go to the temple. And then, you know, Black Panther also sees them running. So then he heads to the temple with them as well. So while they're at the temple, Baloo and Ashanti bump into each other, both searching for Mowgli, and they decide that they're actually on the same team and that they're looking out for Mowgli. So they decide to split up, and they do this kind of plan where they're going to bang these gongs to try to confuse and frustrate Shakira while he's in the middle of this kind of open area looking for Mowgli. So they're banging the gongs and he's getting frustrated, but then Ashanti bangs the gong a little too hard and it falls and it reveals Ashanti. So Shakira is, you know, kind of saying out to Mowgli like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, eat your girl now if you don't come out and like, you know, face me and stuff. Basically what happens is a little battle. Mowgli ends up kind of jumping again across another kind of spacious gap where there's lava at the bottom. You know, Shakira also jumps across. He forces the stuff to fall. They all start to fall, but at the last minute, Baloo grabs Ashanti. He also grabs Mowgli. He rescues them. And then Shakira falls all the way to the bottom, and then a big freaking rock falls on top of him. And you think that he's like, I remember you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, he is DED dead.
But then we reveal like, nope, there was a little opening in that rock that fell on him, and Shakira's alive. And I guess on top of that, the vulture from earlier, Phil Collins, is gonna jump on. He's just gonna, you know, sit on top of the rock that Shakira is trapped in. He's just gonna continue to torment him for the rest of his life with what I'm guessing is probably just gonna be like Phil Collins music. So after the whole battle where they defeat Shakira again for the second time, we all reunite in the jungle. John Reese pulls Mowgli aside and he apologizes for yelling at him about the jungle being dangerous. He even says something like, I should have never said that to you. But in all honesty, John Reese was extremely correct because the jungle is dangerous. They almost died again. But either way, after all that, it's happily ever after. Mowgli, Ashanti, and the baby, they go to get more water from the river, and when they're there, they are greeted by Baloo and Black Panther, and basically they just kind of all like hang out, and then they lead them back into the jungle. So this whole thing about not going to the jungle ends again with them going into the jungle. And
well, it's like they're doing the back and forth thing.
Yeah, but it's just so we just head back into the jungle, and then it's roll credits. It's the end of the movie. And then the final thing after all of this is we get a cover during the credits of the I Want to Be Like You song by Smash Mouth.
That was the hands down best part of this movie.
It's literally Happily Ever After, Smash Mouth song, and then I guess it's not so much of a happy ending.
Oh, because Smash Mouth just played?
Yeah, because Smash Mouth just played.
Come on, dude. Like, no, Smash Mouth is great.
So I guess before we kind of get into the ranking of this, some stuff that I'll say right off the top is it's really hard to talk about this movie because I do not think that they even like needed to continue the story. So as soon as you show me Jungle Book 2, my first question is why? Like the first one is a classic movie, they wrap everything up, they end it, and then when we get this story, it's just kind of like, it kind of tries to redo the stuff from the first movie. Because it literally ends with them going back into the jungle, and the whole point of the first movie was getting the kid out of the jungle. And besides that, the only other thing I really kind of want to say is I do acknowledge and I like the fact that there is a really good cast. I think John Goodman plays Baloo good. He's pretty big around this time. And I like the musical numbers. I thought that it was still pretty engaging, and I thought the songs were good. I thought they kept the energy up. But outside of that, it's just kind of the same plot with some things flipped around. We're going to take a girl and a baby, put them in the jungle. We're going to have all three of them fight Shakira now, but they still defeat Shakira and they don't really learn anything, and they just kind of go back in the jungle. And the biggest part of that is with Baloo, because Baloo's whole arc in the first one was learning to let go but still be like a father figure, I guess. And in this one, he's trying to get Mowgli back in the jungle, and he ends up kind of getting what he wants at the end of the movie by successfully taking Mowgli back into the jungle with these two new people. So I don't know, to me the thing that worked about the first movie was the fact that the jungle was an actual threat and it was about getting the boy out of the jungle. But with this one, they're kind of just saying that with Shakira now hanging out with Phil Collins, there are no threats anymore. So I guess the jungle's safe, but I would argue the jungle is not safe.
It's unfortunate because I just don't think that there's that much to talk about. Like you said, it doesn't really do anything new or really add on anything. It just kind of posits, what if the first movie didn't end there and it just kept going?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I guess, a couple weeks would pass and then Mowgli would get homesick for the jungle and then something like this would happen. And it plays out almost exactly like you'd expect, which is unfortunate because a lot of the movies that we've done in the past, I would argue, are bad. I don't necessarily think this one was bad. There was a lot of stuff that it did. It was a lot more competent than a lot of the other sequels we saw. It was very much more technically impressive or technically well done than a lot of the other messes we've watched.
Yeah, they probably put more effort into it because the original's from 1967. So it's like, if we're coming back around 2003 to make this sequel, we at least have to make it like, we have to get John Goodman. We gotta put some effort into it, and we gotta make it somewhat enjoyable, or else nobody's gonna like what we're doing. And I don't necessarily like what they're doing, but like you said, I will acknowledge the fact that it is better than other sequels we have seen so far.
There are, I think, two distinct tiers based on how long the sequel's kind of been in the oven, as it were. If it's been a while, like in the case with Bambi and Jungle Book and
Lady and the Tramp.
Lady and the Tramp, to an extent, you can tell that there's a lot more effort that goes into the sequel, but you're still facing the same shortcomings that any of the sequels that are a little bit more rushed, like I think maybe King of Thieves.
Yeah.
Or Hunchback 2 were. So it's really interesting seeing, like I said, the same shortcomings, but then also seeing so much more, I think a substantial increase in effort for movies like Jungle Book and Bambi, at least on the more technical notes, insofar as like the casting and the animation.
So as always, the first question on this podcast is, does it work as a sequel? And I'll start off and I will say that I do not think that this movie works as a sequel. This is only taking place like a couple weeks after the first one. And really, it's just about Mowgli getting a little homesick, so he goes back to the jungle, and then we repeat the acts of the first one. Regardless of how I feel about how they executed that story alone is not enough to add on to the first one.
You're not doing anything.
Yeah, you're not doing anything new, and you're not bringing anything new to the story. So for those reasons, I do not think it works as a sequel.
Honestly, I agree like 99%. The only thing I kind of want to add is kind of just to add on to what you were saying. A true sequel does something else. It puts a spin, or it adds on the source material. It really just kind of injects that little bit that makes it a sequel, not just another movie. And this, we just didn't see that there.
Yeah, so that's going to be 2 X's for that. So the next question is it enjoyable / entertaining? And I'll actually flip my answer here, and I will say yes. I actually do think that this movie is enjoyable / entertaining. I think the casting is good. I think the musicals, for the most part, are good. I think that they do a good job with animation. There are some parts of the songs where the animation is kind of impressive. I think it looks good. They give a lot of depth to it. And overall, I would just say that it's a lot more easier to digest than some other movies. So even though I don't agree with the fact that this is a follow-up to the first one, I do still acknowledge the fact that they did make it enjoyable / entertaining.
I feel like I'm being more lenient, but I agree again. I did find this one a lot more entertaining. Not on tone or story or theme, which I feel like are very important, but I think that the technical elements elevated enough to make it like just passable for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think this is one of the more impressive voice casts that we've dealt with. It looked better than I would say maybe half of the sequels that we watched, and this was one of the few sequels where I really thought that the music was, more than just barely passable.
So it's interesting. So that's 2 check marks right there. So now we're tied again. So the third question is, does it need to exist?
I feel like we're going to have the same answer again.
Yeah. So you want to start off or me?
I'll do it this time just so it doesn't look like I'm copying you this whole episode.
Yeah.
I don't think this needs to exist. I think we really got into that at the beginning of this episode with the fact that the first one put a nice little button on everything. This doesn't add anything new. While it is nice that the creators and the producers were able to put something together that was engaging, at least for a younger audience, I don't necessarily think that the effort was worth the outcome.
I guess the main question to ask these people that kind of greenlight these sequels and make them is,
where do you get off?
No. Is the story you're telling something that you wanted to do in the first one, but you didn't have enough space? And I would argue that the first Jungle Book, they told the story that they wanted to tell. I think that this is just a case where they're looking at what property that they have and how they can continue the stories that they have. And I don't think that is enough to justify why we are reanimating and editing a whole new movie. They're only doing it just because we're going to recognize the characters. That's the only reason why they're making this sequel. It's the only reason why this movie exists. You like the first Jungle Book? Well, here's some more. But it's still, for me, it's an X. It does not need to exist. So if you're doing that math at home, that's going to be 4 X's and 2 check marks, which is going to be 1 giant X. But it's also going to get an asterisk because, like I said, it is an upbeat movie. Like you said, if you have a kid, I think they would enjoy watching it. And I don't think it's a waste of time as much as the concept in general was kind of a waste of time.
This is one of the few where I could genuinely see myself watching it and enjoying it as a kid.
And that's all credit to John Goodman and Haley Joel Osment. So yeah, so that's gonna be a wrap on the Jungle Book 2. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, that you comment below. Make sure you check out our other episodes. We are almost at the very end of this first season where we're doing Disney animated sequels. We got one more movie to do after this, and then we're gonna do one more episode where we kind of rank all the movies that we watched and kind of put them in our order from least favorite to favorite. Make sure you stay tuned for all that stuff. And I believe that's going to be the end of this episode. You got anything else to add, Drew?
We'll see you next time.
All right.